I've got to say, watching the first episode, I was blown away by just how effortless it felt. It was just instantly part of this Law and Order universe. And the characters, I mean, usually you're like, oh, where's the introduction of the characters? It just felt like we knew these people instantaneously. It was very impressive. What was it like for you as actors to step into this franchise?
Well, it was a bit strange because for 5 days prior, you have hair and makeup tests, and you have wardrobe tests that have to go through committee after committee after committee, and all that. And one of the most important things I find with any character is my shoe wear, because something about your shoes is about how you fit into the character's shoes.
Yeah,
essentially. And so we turn up on day one, and we were shooting on a yacht, and they said, oh, you have to change your shoes because they can't have these shoes on the deck of the yacht. And they put the shoes on, and all of a sudden I've got a different character than the one I'd been walking around with for the past 3 days. And it threw me, but at the same time, I started to find things that I hadn't looked at before. So it was interesting in that regard. That had nothing to do with your question. I appreciate that. You can cut all of it, but I wouldn't. Because if I do this, a thumbs up appears.
Over here.
Right on your face. Sorry.
Well, Kathleen, what about you? What would you say about joining the franchise?
Oh, I mean, it's just such a thrill. It's such fun. And I think the first time that it was like the first time you do all the little iconic things, like first time you strap on the badge and the gun, and then the first time you pull out the notepad, and the first time you're, interviewing a suspect, or, giving each other a look. Like, I think we must have looked at each other about
we did
7
yeah
million times. And like finding the language of Law and Order in the performances that we're crafting, while also trying to bring our own original characters to it, I think it's just so much fun. It's honestly just such fun. And I think, I thank you for what you said. It's really nice to hear that it comes across that way. I think we were very, very lucky to have an incredibly supportive set, really amazing technicians, really incredible crew, and unbelievable, people to work with and work for. So it made it easy to kind of find it.
It felt like we'd already done an episode the day we started. It really did. It felt like they'd actually had a couple of days they were shooting a couple of things that we weren't involved with. And so they were sort of on their feet, and it helped us to arrive, on set with a feeling that, all right, they know what they're doing. And they had a tough job ahead of them for those first 2 days. They went out on the bay, on the water, on the lake, and it was a beautiful sunny day, and they shot some stuff. And then the next day it was torrential rain, but they had to match the day before. And I was sitting there, dreading what they were going to get. But from all accounts, it looks exactly the same day. And that's the beauty of how hard these guys work.
David Green, too. The beauty of David Green, the cinematographer, is
he'd just pull out an umbrella the size of, Yorkville, and you'd just be amazed what they can come up with. And we just felt welcomed from the moment. At least from the moment I got off the plane, I felt welcomed into this family. And that's very much how it feels still, that there's a shorthand between us all. And we were just excited to take part in an iconic franchise like this, and especially to bring it to a beautiful city like Toronto.
Well, how would you describe your characters? Anything you can share about how you got into their minds?
I mean, there's a lot on the page, right? Like, I think we get the benefit of really, really great writing here, led by Cassie Cameron. And so it was just kind of finding the right way to bring life to the stuff that was already there. We also, I think, it's treading a line with this kind of stuff, because on the one hand, you're nodding to this legacy franchise, this thing that has existed for, it's the longest running drama franchise in TV history. So
is it?
Yeah, Law and Order.
And we're screwed.
And we're the ones that bucks here.
I hope we don't.
I know.
God, I hope we don't.
Yeah, no, there's a way to do, there's a language of Law and Order, there's a lexicon of Law and Order. And so, finding the way into that while also making sure that we're doing something that's distinctive. I think, and I think for me anyway, working so much with Aden through this process, it's such a joy. And watching him develop Graff, where Graff is idiosyncratic and has these kind of, more these really unique character traits. And I think falling into like a bit of a straight man role to that was really fun. Like it felt like there's something kind of classic about the dynamic that I really enjoy.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think that they are both as dynamic as each other. They're just, two sides of the mirror. And Kathleen put it best once when I was asked, can you explain their relationship? And I said, well, they're a bit like an odd couple. And there was a pause, and Kathleen said, why? Because, you're odd and I make it a couple. It was brilliant. And in a way, there's a joy in working together as actors, but also as pretend, detectives, how we began to enter the space and enter the minds of our, the people we were investigating or interrogating or interviewing, what have you. And how we would approach them and encircle them and trap them. And it was almost as if some scenes were like Kathleen was grabbing their heads, and turning them, you are not to look anywhere but me, while I was fleecing through their pockets while she was doing it,
Yeah, I feel like a lot of that was sort of felt, organically through blocking and choreography, just figuring out the ways to move through the space. And it was often that, right? Like kind of one of us as an anchor, usually Bateman, and then Graff kind of investigating. And finding that, I think I felt sort of a key step in establishing, okay, how do these people work together, and what are they, what's going on inside their minds, based in how they approach these interrogations. And it's
and also a different, we would approach in each episode. My greatest fear while we were shooting was that, we're going to get to the next episode and we're going to be in the interview room and I'm going to do the same thing. Look, it's just a room. It's got 4 walls, and what can you do? But, we were constantly at battle with ourselves to not repeat the strategies that we'd employed in the previous, interrogation or an interview to get a suspect to confess, or even just a visit to a victim.
Yeah.
And how we comforted them, or one particular victim, I think I remember it was the victim's wife, said at one point, he wouldn't hurt a fly. And Graff says, yeah, but yet somebody killed him, and she's just learned that her husband's dead. And, he's not heartless, but he's hoping in that by saying that he's going to get something out of her. He's going to get a reaction that's going to tell him whether or not she's a suspect in any way whatsoever, or whether she's, hiding something. And so he was a funny character to play in that regard, because you didn't ever quite know on first reading of the script whether he was, neglecting the empathy, or the compassion, or whether he was securing an anchor into their psyche in which later he could pull on and see if he could peel back some truth. And so it was always a joy. Each episode had a new and exciting flavor to it. I hope, at least for the viewer, it did for me.
Yeah, same. And I think that there's something too that was happening where, each of these characters gets sort of knocked off their axis by different things, in terms of being human beings that are impacted by the work that we're doing. There were different cases that would strike Graff and Bateman in different ways, and that would kind of touch on nerves. And I think getting to see what those things are that kind of cut under the skin for both of the characters was really, it was really interesting. And I think, while this is not a show where you get to see, the detectives' apartments and their home life and all of that stuff, you do really get to kind of know who these people are, because you see how their, humanity operates in this really kind of demanding and high stakes job.
Yeah, you never even go inside a car with them,
Right.
if we could just do a scene inside a car, we walk as fast as a car goes in the show, it's crazy.
Yes.
But faster. But, we never pull away from the investigation and take a moment to reflect as these characters, I'm sure they have to decompress, they have to debrief, they have to, recompress, they have to prepare, and they have to arrive. And, and that's a daily occurrence, especially when you're dealing with something as heinous as homicide. And that's one thing that we, apart from all the silly things we did while we were shooting to keep our flame alive on these long days, the one thing that we did keep, very close to the top of our priorities, if not the top of the priority, was, these characters have to remember it's about a victim. And we have to make sure that we are there to represent the victim's wishes to find justice for the crime committed against them. And when we got into that, we suddenly realized the show had a pace of its own. And all you had to do was keep up, because you were with them. You weren't going away to the cafeteria to listen to, Graff talk about, my son didn't, make the team this weekend. He's very upset, or whether he even has a son, we don't know. I mean, there's very little we do know, but those tiny little snippets that we would get so excited. And I would get so excited about finding out about Francis Bacon here.
It's right. He literally accidentally called me that on camera. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it was a long day. Well, it was. But anyway,
Still long.
But learning anything about Francis here was just so exciting.
Yeah.
Oh, she's got a daughter. Or I'm not saying that's the truth, but anything at all was a joy, because then it humanized this, because we and they being the characters, but also homicide detectives themselves, they have to put themselves in a situation where the machine of the investigation must roll forward at all costs in order to find that justice, and the humanization of what impacts you whilst doing it is secondary.
Yeah, it's like the humanity is the thing that kind of guides it's the driving force for this work. Like I think it's both of the characters' humanity that kind of pushes them into these places, and gives them the tools almost to solve these crimes. But we learn about them through the work primarily, and not the other way around.
And so there was also an opportunity when you'd read a scene, and it was, of course, only on first reading, it's just a scene about, oh, okay, well, they're gathering evidence here, or they're dispelling the possibility that the road forked in that direction. And you read it again, and you suddenly went, no, they're talking about their viewpoint on life as well. And that was those Easter eggs you'll find all the way through the season, where you'll see a scene and it'll just click, hopefully, that actually they were talking about themselves. They were revealing, an artifact that they hide deep within in order to do the work they have to do.
Well, it's awesome. I can't wait to see the rest of the show. I thank you very much for the time.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Have a great day.
Terrific. You too.